For those who know what I do, my life is my website, Inside Chassidus.org. I've been telling the stories of Tishrei by the Rebbe forever. And the credit goes to Mrs. Garari. She was a 9th grade Machaneches when I started. Every year she would bring me to her house and I would describe Tishrei by the Rebbe. It's the first time I'm putting it up online. I've never ever done it. I don't know if it's a positive thing or it's a negative thing. I feel it's the time. Just describing Tishrei by the Rebbe is difficult enough. But I'm making it available. I'm putting it up online, which means some people will enjoy it and some people will get pleasure from being able to tell me how I don't remember things correctly, or I'm exaggerating, or I'm making it up, or I have great imagination, or whatever other compliments Lubavitchers give one another in their incredible hours as well. But okay, those are all I already put up my defenses. I already put up all the lines of defense for the expected criticism. So I'm holding Hakafot. That's what I'm holding. Okay, I'm holding Hakafot. The Hakafot, there were two types of Nagunim. There were Nagunim that the Rebbe started, and there were the Nagunim that we started.
Before we go into Hakafot, I have one question, Madam Kipper.
Sure.
By the Napoleon's March, every year the Rebbe would stand in his chair. Just clarification.
He would stand in his chair and jump up and down.
I'm saying every year.
But not, but.
You describe Napoleon's March.
And you know what's so interesting about it? I was there so many times, I don't remember it. I do not remember the Rebbe on his chair. I can't remember it. I'm telling you the truth, I denke es nicht. In the early 80s, they built a platform. And the Rebbe stopped jumping up on his chair. The platform was higher and it was more comfortable for the Rebbe. It was a much bigger area. And it was so high that the Rebbe's head was as high as the Kingston Weiberschule, the Kingston windows. So everybody could see him. So jumping on the chair was not so safe. It wasn't so safe. And it was also very small, very narrow. But on this, so from the time I'm probably 14 or 15, they had this platform. But I was in 7, I was 7, 8, 9, 10. I do not remember. I'm sure my brother does. I just don't remember. It's like a blank.
So the whole Napoleon's March, the Rebbe was standing on his chair jumping?
No, the Rebbe, when we would start singing Napoleon's March, the Rebbe would be facing the wall. And we would sing, and the Rebbe was in his own world. B'chlal, the Rebbe was in his own world. And after some time, a minute or two, the Rebbe would very gingerly start to bang on his ständer. Okay? And after that, he'd bang a little more vigorously with both hands. Right? Then he would turn around. When he turned around, his face was completely covered with his talis. And again, in the early years, he climbed up on the chair, which I probably saw 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And I don't know how, but I do not have a recollection of that siyur. But he would go up on the same platform, and he would have the talis over his face, and he would clap, or he would swing his hands. You know, the Rebbe had nuas that were regular. He would clap very vigorously, or he would swing his hands like this. Maybe sometimes he would do it with one hand, but usually with both hands. And as the singing would go on, the talis would sort of slide up, almost like by mistake. But it was b'kavon. It was clear that it was b'kavon. And at some point, the Rebbe's talis would go off his face, and you could see Pnei HaKodesh, the Rebbe's holy countenance. And in my opinion, he looked the same way that he looked by the Tkiyas. I told you the Tkiyas. His face was like pale, with a little red color, and you felt like he was a million miles away. And there's Bechlal Nito. He's not in the room at all. And the point actually didn't last that long, between 5 and 10 minutes. And it would get very energetic. I remember one year, that was under the talis still. And you could see, I was pretty far away. I mean, I had a good spot, but I wasn't next to the Rebbe. His body was shaking, like a washing machine in a spin cycle. If you don't put the clothing in right, the whole machine shakes. The guf is getreselt. You could see that the Rebbe was sobbing under the talis, sobbing. It was a very surreal feeling that the Rebbe is pasha crying and screaming, Bi b'simcha. By the Rebbe, this was a normal contradiction, a normal dichotomy, but this was one of the things I remember that one year by Napoleon's March. Then the Rebbe finished Napoleon's March, went on, and we finished Kaveh, Aleinu, Maidev. The Rebbe turned around maybe 10 minutes later. He looked like a light bulb. He looked like a light bulb, like a fluorescent light bulb. Look at the moon on a bright night. The contrast between how he looked by Napoleon's March and just 10 minutes later is indescribable, how a person could change so much. He looked the word that I've been using, he looked beautiful. Azoi Shein, so beautiful. His face was radiant, had a shine. And it was a joy. And the Rebbe would step forward and say loud 3 times, Good Yom Tiv, Good Yom Tiv, Good Yom Tiv. Slower than I did it. Good Yom Tiv. And the whole Elam was screaming, Good Yom Tiv, 3 times. Vesamachta. And he could have walked on water. He walked out of the shul so fast, always with a simcha. And the less the Poryad, he would sing his father's Hakafot niggin. Ay, 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 ay. And the mood of Sukkah started right then. Anyway, let's get I told you I'm going to do a Hakafot with you. I'll do a Hakafot. Yeah, of course. This is what I'm here for. Hakafot, there were 2, I said, I'm trying to start from where I'm holding, so I'm giving this segue. But Hakafot, there were 2 kinds of Nagunim. Nagunim that we started, and Nagunim that the Rebbe started. The Nagun the Rebbe started with the Nagunim of the Ataresis. We sang 3 Ataresis, and the Rebbe used to start the Niggin after each one. And the Rebbe had a small repertoire of Nagunim that he would use. Or Ufaratsta, she has a mecha sometimes. And the Rebbe loved Allah Selah. He loved that Niggin. I don't know why, but he loved Allah Selah. There's one other Niggin that I'm not remembering. The very freilich niggin that the Rebbe offers us today, oh God, it's not coming to me. There was another niggin that was very commonly used by the Rebbe. How did it start? This is not it. I'm sorry, I'm coming up with there's one other niggin that the Rebbe used to start, but it was a very small repertoire of Nagunim, and the Rebbe used to say each Ata Haresa, and then we would say the pasuk of Arachim, and the Rebbe would turn around and he would start singing, and the Rebbe would clap. The minute the Rebbe turned back his face to the wall, the singing would stop. Shminat Tzeres, the Rebbe got the first and last pasuk of each Ataresa, and after each Ataresa he would start a niggin. After we did 3 Ataresas, we would do Ufaratsta. The Rebbe introduced Ufaratsta. So the Rebbe would say 3 times the pasuk of Ufaratsta. But the Rebbe spoke in a very high tone. Simchas Teda, the tone was freilach. There's a tape of the Rebbe saying Ataresa by the Sim Sefer Teda. It's a much lower tone. But Simchas Teda, the tone was freilach. And they would say 3 times V'hoya. And then in Ishnas Hakel, and this year, Tov Shin Pei Gimel, the Rebbe the last time sang also Hin, and he maybe Eschem Yedet Sof, and Bikamas, I don't remember all the words. But Kol Godel Yeshuvu Heina 3 times, and then the Rebbe would start Uparatsta. Then was Hakafot. Now Hakafot is Azoi. There's the Rebbe's own Hakafot, and then there's everybody else's Hakafot. The Rebbe got the first Hakafot, and the Rebbe got the last Hakafot. And the Rebbe danced with Rashag. He danced with his brother-in-law. So as a rule, the Rebbe's Hakafot was the shortest, because the Rashag used to dance an arm in arm with the Rebbe. They would hold the Sefer Torah in their left hand. They'd put their right hands over each other's shoulders and dance in a circle. And the Rashag used to look at the ceiling. I assumed that Rashag was uncomfortable that he was dancing with the Rebbe. The Idach, it was a Gvaldig Eschus. I heard that when he had a stroke and he was in the hospital, he asked who did the Rebbe dance with when he wasn't there. So they told the Rashag that the Rebbe danced alone, and he was so happy. And this was his only him. He danced with the Rebbe, nobody else danced with the Rebbe. But when Rashag wasn't there and the Rebbe danced alone, this Hakafot went from being the shortest Hakafot to being the longest Hakafot. They would hold the Sefer Torah and just dance around and around and look at the Olam. So they built a little platform in the middle of the shul that the Rebbe would stand, let's say 12 inches from the ground. And then in the middle memes, they put a platform on top of a platform, so the Rebbe was probably 4 feet from the ground, and it allowed more people to see the Rebbe during the Rebbe's Hakafot. But most of the years, the Rebbe danced with his shvager, with the Rashag, at the first Hakafot and the last Hakafot. So the Chazan went first. The Chazan was holding Mashiach Sefer Torah. The Chazan was usually an old man, so Label Groner is holding on to the Sefer Torah, and the Chazan, so Sefer Torah shouldn't fall down. Yankel Katz was the Chazan, and they're walking backwards. Behind Yankel Katz is walking the Rebbe. Behind the Rebbe is walking Rashag. Now the years that I was a Bocher, Yankel Katz was an old man and Rashag was after a stroke. So nobody was rushing. And the Rebbe was strolling. You have to understand, they made what's called a shvil. two long tables that ran from the front of the shul till the center of the shul, where they had a box of tables, which was a rectangle, about say 20 feet east to west and maybe 12 feet north to south, which was called the ches. And the Rebbe used to walk, and the people are pushing against this table on both sides. The pressure was extraordinary. And the Rebbe used to walk between the two tables, and in front of him is Yankel Katz going slow, behind him is Ashag going slower. And the Rebbe is continuously looking back to see that his brother-in-law is okay, that no one is trampling him. And behind the Ashag were all the rest of the Sforim. So the Rebbe used to walk down this little path like a man walking in a garden. Complete patience. And it's so beautiful, Simchas Torah. And of course, against the table, standing Bachrim, who could stand next? Old people couldn't stand there. And everybody tries to touch the Sefer Torah and to give the Rebbe, to say to the Rebbe, the Rebbe Nibel Ayor. And if you were Zoicha, the Rebbe, we should live to do it next year, and the Rebbe would say, Omen Gamatem. If you're Zoicha, the Rebbe would answer you, you also. they say the first person who did it because he wanted the Rebbe to tell him Gamatem. And it became a tradition. I was in the second row, I wasn't able to do it, but I was able to see the Rebbe walk. And I was looking at the Bachrim. Looking here and looking here, like a king walking through a garden full of trees and looking at the beautiful fruit. It was a very special tziyah. And then would look back and say, and he's in complete no rush, because he's being held up by very slow vehicles in front of him and behind him. He went to the middle of the shul, and you go around the bimah one time and you say, An Hashem Eshiana. The bimah was on the floor. Then the Rebbe would go into the open space and he would dance with the Rashak. So we were children. They would throw us over people's heads, and they'd plop us down in the ches, and we would sit under the table. So we had really good spots. We had good spots. My father would just bring us. When we were little, he couldn't do it. We were a little bit older. He would just send us to the middle of the shul, and the middle of the shul was dominated by children. People had Hakafot, there's no place to dance because the kids were all there. When there was Hakafot, we had it under the table, and the other Hakafot, we came out. And we watched the Rebbe dance. We could even theoretically reach out and kiss the Torah, and the Rebbe would dance. The Sefer Torah was in his left hand. And I mentioned to the group before you the interesting thing that the Rebbe had the Sefer Torah with which the Friedrich Rebbe danced. He used it maybe 1 year or 2 years, but he stopped. The Rebbe had his own Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah, the little white one with that beautiful crown that's just made of silver and gold, it looks like a globe, was purchased for the Rebbe by Harav Moshe Ashkenazi. And he paid for it twice, because the guy told me he didn't pay for it. And he didn't want there should be any kind of a eater on something which belongs to him. He paid for it twice. And he brought it as a gift to the Rebbe. That's the Slavit. It's called the Sefer Torah of Mesidus Nefesh. And then when that Sefer Torah came, immediately the Rebbe stopped using the one the Friedrich Rebbe used and started using this one, which is a pella. We all know how makusha the Rebbe is to the Friedrich Rebbe, because this is his. This is the Rebbe Sefer Torah. It's Taka the Rebbe Sefer Torah. And this little Sefer Torah was the Sefer Torah they used by all the maftir. And there are two kriyas Torah. They used this little one. That was the one that the Rebbe used to get maftir in. And the Rebbe danced the Sefer Torah. And they would dance in a circle. And like I said, the Hakafot was quite short because the Rashag was looking at the ceiling. Now, maybe 20 years before he got dizzy. It took him longer to get dizzy. But for the Yechideng, even as a child, in other words, even before my bar mitzvah, was that the Rebbe's Hakafot was rather short. And we always sang the same niggin. Ay, 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 ay. The Rebbe's Hakafot's niggin. Then Nun Aleph. I forgot what Shemir said someone said, but the Rebbe started himself. Ay, 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 ay. This is the Rebbe's father's Hakafot's niggin. And the Rebbe had a chavivas to this niggin. There's no doubt about it. But the Rebbe also was very shy about his father. That's true. So at some point, the Rebbe started to sing the Rebbe's Hakafot's niggin, and then that's the niggin that we sing now. It was just a few times, Nun Aleph and Nun Beis. But you have Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, and the Rebbe started his father's first Hakafot, seventh Hakafot, and the Rebbe danced with the niggin of his father. But until then, they used the Rashag's Hakafot's niggin, the regular Hakafot's niggin from the Lubavitcher sing. Now, Rashag had a stroke in the summer of 1980. So Simchas Torah, Memalf, he wasn't there. He was in the hospital still. Membeis, he was already back. And he danced with the Rebbe for a few more years. Memvav maybe, I don't know about Memzayin. Memchas for sure not. When the Rashag wasn't there, the Rebbe danced alone. When the Rebbe danced alone, the shortest Hakafot became the longest Hakafot. The Rebbe would hold the sefer with both this little sefer with both his hands and go like this. And go around and around slowly and dancing and be ma'oder de olam. It was a very, very beautiful tzir, the Rebbe dancing by himself. The Rebbe always had the first Hakafot and the last Hakafot. I'm going to share. I'm trying to sort of separate Shmini Atzeres from Simchas Torah, but now I'm going to share something with you, which sort of fuses Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah together. 1980 to 81, the Rashag was not there. The Rebbe danced alone, but the Rebbe had just founded the Tzivos Hashem Moiset. Tzivos Hashem celebrates its birthday Chalamet Sukkos. The birth of Tzivos Hashem is Chalamet Sukkos, and this year it's 6 Hakels, 42 years. Tavshin Memal, Tavshin Begimel. It's 42 years since the Rebbe was Miyaseh Tzivos Hashem. So Chalamet, the Rebbe made rallies. There were 3 rallies before Rosh Hashanah. There were 3 rallies between assessment. They made rallies with kids. The Rebbe prepared Tzivos Hashem Pesach before. The Rebbe called it a pilot program. The Rebbe did something for children 6 months earlier, and on that basis, Tishrei time, the Rebbe made many rallies. And then Chalamet Sukkos, he gave the Moiset official name, Tzivos Hashem. You have to read the Sichos of Chalamet Sukkos, where the Rebbe Pashat explained why it's called an army and what happens in an army. The only award you get in an army is a medal. They don't give you money and free bicycles, you get a medal. And for that medal you work very hard, because the Ikir Schar is not how valuable the prize is, it's the covet of having gotten the prize. And that's how the Rebbe explained the Tzivos Hashem. So the Rebbe turned around in the middle of Hakafot. This happened. And in those years, you could still hear. I like to tell you that most of the years of the Rebbe's Nasiya 770 was quiet. The last years, the late Mems, it was noisy. You couldn't hear anything. And it wasn't noisy because people were less respectful. I think it was noisy because there were more people in the room than there was inches. It was so many people. Somebody was uncomfortable in every place in the show. Someone couldn't stand. Like this. So you, ooh. But until the mid-Mems, it was such quiet. Imagine middle of Hakafot, Rebbe speaks a Sikha, and I was in the middle of the shul, and I can hear. If I'm not mistaken, he spoke the 4th Hakafot and the 5th Hakafot. But the 5th Hakafot, the Rebbe said that the Moiset that we just made, Tzivos Hashem, Shmini Atzeres, he said this. So we're going to be mechabed all the Tzivos Hashem and Hakafot with their melamdim, with their teachers. So it became 81, 80, Tafshin Mamal. So that was already exciting, yeah? And then we hear that the Rebbe is going to the Hakafot himself. The Rebbe is a Malamet of Kinderlach. If you, Steinsaltz writes about it in his books, how the Rebbe was always surrounded by kids, and how even though the Rebbe was so great and so old, there was so little, there was no generation gap. He was very moved by how the Rebbe had kids mamish under his feet, and he was so happy to have them there. And the Rebbe danced with the kids. The Rebbe went to the Hakafot. So Shmini Atzeres, there was not that many kids in shul, but it was very pushy. It was a rachmanos on the children, and the Rebbe danced with the kids. I was already bar mitzvah, but guys just 3 years younger than I, Tafshin Mem Aleph, I just turned 15. I was 2 years and a month after my bar mitzvah. So kids are now, when you get to 58, 56, 58, all the same. They have the same white beard and the same kvetcherai. So my friends, a few years younger than I, were 11, 12. And they were old enough to understand what was going on, and they danced with the Rebbe. The tziyur of the Rebbe dancing with the kids, which I remember, was extraordinary. It was a love fest. It was a love fest. The kids felt so close to the Rebbe. They felt so close to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe made himself so available to the children. I could see kids holding on to his kapote. Holding on to his... The Rebbe's dancing, and the kids are low. They're on the ground, but they're with him. It was such a beautiful experience of the kids with the Rebbe. And it went on for a while. The next night, every child in Crown Heights came to 770, you understand? So this I don't remember. Someone told this to me, and of course once he told it to me, he said, "No, yeah, I remember, but I don't remember it." The Rebbe spent 10 minutes organizing room for the kids. There was no room for the children inside the ches. So the Rebbe came to the center of the circle holding his Sefer Torah, and I think he actually told Lebelkron wanted to help him. The Rebbe pushed him away. The Rebbe screamed at the Bachim, "Gate up!" The Rebbe screamed at the Bachim, "Step back!" So the Bachim who were behind the table would step away, so that the Bachim created a ring. Inside that ring there was a space between them and the table, and the children who were older stood there. The Rebbe spent enough time until every child had a space. And then the Rebbe started to dance. And the same thing as the night before, the Rebbe danced with the children with such ahava, there was no separation. Little kids and the Rebbe understood each other. There was no problem. The fact that they were kids and they were interested in having fun. And the Rebbe is the Ish Elokim Kaddish. mit Wasser der Rebbe von Numen, mit Nebishten, and the Rebbe and the children had such a kesher. It was a very, very, very special moment. That was one thing that I wanted to tell you. And the other thing I wanted to tell you, this is really more connected to Simchas Torah than to Shmini Atzeres, but I guess I'll say it now, is the year that the Rebbetzin passed away. That Tishrei, Memches, there were many shinuyim, many things that happened that were different, that people who were close were very concerned with, and then the Rebbetzin was nostalgic. But one of the most blatant shinuyim was Hakafot. It may have started the 7th Hakafot Shmini Atzeres, but I don't remember if for sure it was Simchas Torah. The Rebbe went to the middle of the shul, he's dancing by himself. The Rashag was still alive, but the Rashag was no longer able to come to Hakafot. He was too old. And the Rebbe's dancing with the Sefer Torah. He's going around, yeah? Each time he went around, he was holding the Sefer Torah. He looked into your eyes. He went like this. Each yochid, each person. At this point, I was really in the front. I had two places, a place near the middle and a place in the front. And at some point, a man said to me, "You should know you're a murderer." I was pushing people. So I stopped going, so I stayed in the front. So I was further away, but I think that Rebbe looked me in the eyes. I'm not sure, but I think he looked me in the eyes. Around every circle, he went to another group. The Hakafot took a very long time, maybe half an hour. The 7th Hakafot of Simchas Torah night, the Rebbe danced around and around and around, and he literally he looked at you and he handed you the Torah. First the people closer to him, then a little further, then a little further. There are women in the Vaibishol who swear they looked straight in the eyes and gave them the Sefer Torah. The 7th Hakafot of Simchas Torah, the Rebbe went back to the front of the room, and instead of giving the Sefer Torah away, he took the Sefer Torah up to his place, all the way near the ceiling. The Rebbe was very high. By Hakafot of Simchas Torah in the later years, the Rebbe was so high up. You know where the ceiling is 90 degrees, 45 degrees? The Rebbe Shtender was that high. But you know the ceiling in the front goes like this here on an angle? That's how high the Rebbe was. And he continued giving the Sefer Torah. In other words, people who was not able to see from the middle of the shul, he took the Sefer with him, he carried it up to his place, and he continued the Hakafot for a Meshach Zman. I think it took 45 minutes. The Hakafot of Simchas Torah, the 7th Hakafot, Memches, took forever. And the Rebbe looked at each person and handed them the Torah. It was at the time it was very uplifting. It was very vada. Nun Beis, the Shmua it's more than a Shmua. The Rebbe got the 7th Hakafot. And somehow there was an 8th Hakafot. They went back to his place. And I forgot if he gave the Sefer Torah away or not, but the Rebbe turned around again. We danced extra. There was an extra dance. But this is a little bit of the Rebbe's Hakafot, how the Rebbe danced with the Rashag. In the later years, how the Rebbe danced alone. Now the middle 5 Hakafos, so I was telling the girls from the other group, they had to synchronize the Nagunim, what we were singing. So they would send out a little note, the second Hakafot. They were standard Nagunim that we sang by Hakafot. There were regular Nagunim that we always sang. And one year there was 2 different papers sent around, because 2 different groups of people decided what Nagunim we should sing. But there was a group of people who made sure that the whole shul got a little note. So you knew what nigun was being sung. Otherwise, the shul is so big and so noisy that you have 3 different Nagunim at the same time and no one knows what the other one's doing. So we used to start those Nagunim. And they gave that Hakafos to different groups of people. They had different groups of people. All the shluchim from Europe, all the shluchim from Eretz Yisrael, all the guests from Europe, all the guests from Eretz Yisrael, mashpiyim, large groups of people given that Hakafos. And if you wanted, not everybody would go, because if you had to leave your place and go back to your place, it was very inconvenient. You would push to the front, and if you were really lucky, they would give you a sefer. All the svarim were used by the Hakafos, and you'd go to the middle of the shul, and you would dance your Hakafot. Groups of people. By the way, they used to take the crowns off the Sefer Torah. They used to take the crowns off the Sefer Torah. Because they block, and because they break. They break. A Sefer Torah breaks. A crown is not made to be yanked around. So one year the Rebbe spoke, why are you taking the crowns off the Sefer Torah? So after that, the crowns were on the Sefer Torah, and every year after Simchas Torah, all the crowns went back to the shop to be fixed, because they would break, they would fall apart, because they were not made to be manhandled the way they were handled by Hakafos. But the Rebbe said the crowns were changed to Sefer Torah, and the Rebbe would stand in his place. And the Seder was as follows. We would start to sing, and the Rebbe would turn around. The Hakafot lasted as long as the Rebbe looked at the Olam. The Rebbe turned back to his place, Hakafot was over, Ad Kan Hakafot Beis, it got quiet. How long were the Hakafos? Not particularly long. Shmini Atzeres could be 3 minutes Hakafa, 4 minutes Hakafa, very, very short. By the way, on a regular year, Shmini Atzeres, Hakafa started at 8:30. By 10:15, the show was over, done, finished. Lak Sakamel. They never left. Everyone went home to eat and to sleep. The only night sukkahs people slept was Shmini Atzeres. It was relatively speaking quick. Sometimes it'd be very long Hakafos. We had Hakafos for 15 minutes also if the Rebbe wanted. But the Rebbe ran the show, the Hakafos could be as short as 2 or 3 minutes. They could be as long as 10 or 15 minutes. And the Rebbe's Hagavot to the Hakafos were very, very different. When I remember Hakafos, especially Shmini Atzeres, we would start to sing a niggin, and they would turn around, and he wouldn't even clap. He would look. You could see him, he's looking around, turn to face the wall, Hakafah over. Next, the whole thing took 2 minutes. Mavish, 2 minutes was 120 seconds off his egg. Next Hakafah, they took a long time, started about to go back in, and then to call the new people, and then to take them out. And so between Hakafahs took 10 minutes. Hakafahs were very short, and they tried to make that expedite that by creating an Kaddish in the middle of the shul. It was very difficult, shuttling all the Svarim back and forth. And then he turns around, invited Zelbamai, and looks. Sometimes he Pasha didn't even clap. And turns face, well, Hakafah was over, that's how the Hakafahs were. They ran the Hakafahs as he wished. And sometimes they would clap very gingerly, just like this, like as if his head, his hands and his body was looking at the crowd, and the hands were almost clapping like mechanically. That happened also more than once or twice. But then there were Hakafahs that were incredible. Where the Rebbe would swing both of his hands and be ma'odah the olam, and it would go on. And sometimes, the standard tnuah, the Rebbe claps, right? The Rebbe claps on Shabbos, the Rebbe claps, right? Even though there's a shal in Allah about it, the Rebbe once told somebody, the first time the Rebbe clapped Shabbos was in 1953 or 54, Tafshin Yadal. There was a chassid by the name of Rebbe Shmuel Kahanov sitting behind the Rebbe, and he said to himself, oh no, you're not allowed to clap on Shabbos. And as the Rebbe is clapping, the Rebbe heard his thought, and the Rebbe tells him, Rebbe Shmuel, the Minchas HaLozer is matir. The Minchas HaLozer, the Munkat Rebbe, Prince clapping on Shabbos, the Rebbe clapped on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And then of course, this was the regular Tnuah. The regular Tnuah, but the Rebbe was one hand, sometimes the right hand, sometimes the left hand. But Simchas Torah, sometimes the clapping would be very, very vigorous, and sometimes the Rebbe would swing both of his hands with Chol Koychei. But there were Tnuah Simchas Torah that you never saw. There were motions that the Rebbe did, encouraging you to Simchas Torah, which you never saw. It didn't happen always, but when the Rebbe really wanted to get the crowd going, this was one Tnuah, both hands like this, or both hands like this, and the most extreme was this. As a beide hand, as a. These Tnuahs, you can see pictures of the Rebbe clapping. You can see the Rebbe doing this. You can even see the Rebbe doing in videos this, yes? But this you never saw. And this you never saw, yeah? And this you for sure never saw. Because this was only Simchas Torah. Only these were Simchas Torah, the Ketnuas. And when the Rebbe did this, the Elam didn't know what to do, The Simcha in the Rebbe's shul was real. But it was very respectful. It was very weirdly controlled. It wasn't drunk. One drunk could ruin a whole Simchas Torah. It's not, the Shikurim are at everybody else's expense. It was real Yiddish Simcha. And on the one hand, we sang at a normal pace. We didn't sing so fast that we couldn't say the words. But the whole energy was very, very happy. And we were responding to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe created this energy through these various different tnuas. In my mind, I could see the Rebbe clapping like this and dancing. In other words, his legs are going off the ground a little bit. Clapping with it, and his legs, he's dancing in his place, So these were more exciting hakafos, and there were certain negunim that you knew the Rebbe was going to respond to, If you sang Chalkan Shai Magadeya, on and on and on. So if you sang Chalkan Shai Magadeya, you almost pushed the button. But let's be, the truth of the matter is, the Rebbe did what he wanted. Nobody controlled the Rebbe, but there were occasions, I'm telling you again, Shmini Atzeres for sure, where the Rebbe didn't clap at all. Or he clapped very, very limited. And then there were times where the Rebbe, the Rebbe just put everything into the dancing and the singing, and the whole shul would respond to him. It was very, very exciting. It was beautiful. It was happy, it was energetic, it was uplifting, and it was holy. The Hakafot by the Rebbe were very, very holy. These were the Hakafos in the middle. Now the notable things about these Hakafos in the middle were these, or at least this. Simchas Torah, the second Hakafa, belonged to the Israeli delegation to the United Nations. The Israeli delegation to the United Nations were Israelis, so they don't keep Simchas Torah. Shmini Atzeres, of course, they wouldn't travel because you're not going to go in a car. But Simchas Torah, for them, it wasn't Yom Tov. So it would come with the limousines. I had friends who would stand outside and count the limousines. I'm sure I saw a limousine once or twice, but I was more concerned with a place than with a limousine. Men and women, a lot of people, 50, 60 men and women. So the women would go upstairs, and the men would come downstairs. They would go to the front of the shul, and the Rebbe was very mechabed them, very mechabed them. And it was a covet for them, and it was a covet for the Rebbe. Beideveg. And one or two or three, the heads of the delegation, the official spokesmen of the nations, would actually walk over to the Rebbe and tell the Rebbe good Yom Tiv. And sometimes they would exchange a word or two or three, and they got the second Hakafah, the 10-second Hakafah. You may have seen a video of Bibi Netanyahu telling a story about going over to the Rebbe in Shul to talk. Do you know that story? He did it on the news. He spoke about it in the UN. He said it in the UN. He said it in the generals of the UN. I'm mentioning the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He mentioned the Rebbe inside the UN. You're going to a house of darkness. And a little light can brighten up a house of 119 people. It's a house of darkness. The Rebbe spoke to him for 45 minutes. That's not an exaggeration. You know how I know? Because I was there. And we waited. Do you know what it means? Hakaf is 45 minutes doing nothing. The pushing is gefährlich. And the Rebbe is talking to Bibi. 45 minutes. The Rebbe was so aware of the Olam. And he was so sensitive to the Olam. I mean, the Rebbe shortened his kiyas when the Olam grew bigger. The Rebbe spoke to Bibi by Hakafos in Shul for 45 minutes because the Rebbe knew that he needs to. It has to be here, and it has to be now. In other words, it wasn't just because the Rebbe couldn't find another time to talk to him. He could have called him into his room. It was a long talk, and it was quiet. And I think about it now, this story happened 40 years ago. Let's say Bibi is 80. He was a relatively young man. He was then the ambassador to the United Nations. And the Rebbe spent a long time with him and spoke to him. So he tells his story, basically, he tapped the Rebbe on the shoulder. He said to the Rebbe, I came to see you. And the Rebbe said, just to see, not to talk. That's how he tells the story. And then they talked. And we waited. Now, of course, the Israelis have a trademark, how they dance Hakafos. You ever see Israelis? They hold the Sefer Torah over their heads, So, as kids, we knew which Sefer Torah which Hakafah belonged to the Israeli delegation, and it was a very big covet for the Rebbe. And always, Simchas Torah, the second Hakafah, they came. A few years they missed, but Azoi, every single year they came, and they would go over to the Rebbe. The Rebbe was machabed them, and they were machabed the Rebbe. It was a covet for the Rebbe. It was a very, very big covet for them. And a lot of them today, now they're old people, have very, very real memories of being by the Rebbe in Shul, by Hakafos. And the different Hakafos were given to different people, and we danced. Another very famous and memorable event that happened by Hakafos is the story of Hadar Zabuna. Right? It was Lamed Dalet, Shnas Hakel. This is 49 years ago, 7 Hakels ago. The Yom Kippur War was 5 days old. The week was 10 days old. It was Yud, and this was Chav Gimel. It's 13 days old, yeah?
What year did this really
start coming? I have no idea. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. So they were fighting in Israel, and the beginning of that war was terrible. I mean, the Yom Kippur War, we were losing so bad. There were so many miracles. There's so many big miracles. It was unfortunately necessary to have so many big nisim, but it was a very terrible war. So Shmini Atzeres by night. The fourth Hakafah. So if you know how Hakafos works? You read words. The fourth Hakafah says, Yedei HaMachshavos Yeshiano, Kabe V'no Hatzlichano, Leiv Yishtokas Neinu, V'yemka. And then there's small words. Mitzvah Hashem Baram, Ir Aseinayim, Keila Hashem, whatever it is. This words from different psukim. If you look at the Nusach Hakafos, you'll see there's a bunch of kapitlach that have 7 psukim, and you read one pasuk of those 7 by each one of the Hakafos, including Mizmor David Havla Hashem and Eil Havla Hashem Beis Koil. There's 7 koiles. The first Hakafah is 1 koil. Second Hakafah is the last koil. The last Hakafah you read till the end of the kapitel. So there's a whole. If you pay attention to what you're saying in those small words, it actually makes sense. There's a number of different things that you read from different contexts. So they're divided up into 7. So the Rebbe turns around, holding a siddur, And he starts to sing Mitzvah Hashem Bahara with the niggin of the old Oteres Ho Wadet Mitzvah Hashem Bahara Mihira Zinayim Keila Deshem. The Rebbe sang till the end. I don't have a siddur here. The end of that, I don't know if Chassidus has it, maybe that has it. The end of that shtikala, the fourth Hakafot, is the words Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. That's how it finishes. Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. So the Rebbe started to sing. I have 6 minutes. The Rebbe started to sing the fourth Hakafot. Mitzvah Hashem Bahara Meir Hasenoyim Keila Deshem Sheva Yeshaber Deshem. The Rebbe sang. Then it finishes Baruchim Tar Nacham Yisrael Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. The three words Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. The Rebbe roared. He said very loud. Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. The next night, when the delegation came, and they couldn't believe that they were dancing in 770, the Rebbe told the ambassador, Ich habe euch gepelt, mit euch gepelt, but the Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. He walks and tells them, yesterday, by the Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach, we already arranged the victory. The Rebbe tells them, but euch gepelt. You understand? Shmini Atzeres, the fourth Hakafot, the Rebbe sang this, and in the Ne'imeis, so the next night, the Rebbe tells them, last night, by the fourth Hakafot, we arranged the victory with the Ne'imeis b'mincha netzach. And Simchas Torah was even a bigger chiddush. The Rebbe turned around and started singing the Haderes Amunah with the niggin of the French anthem. Haderes Amunah. Now I was there, and I was 8. I just turned 8. I remember, I thought the Frenchies were hitting the ceiling. They didn't know what they were. Wow, they were out of their minds. The Rebbe sang with their national anthem. They were so excited. B'chlal, there were always a lot of Frenchies in 770, and there was a very good reason. Because if you came to the Rebbe from France, you ready for this? The Rebbe paid 50% of the traveling expenses. Every person who came to the Rebbe from France all the years got 50% discount on his ticket. The Rebbe paid half the traveling expenses. Do you imagine? So, in other words, if 100 Frenchies could afford to come to the Rebbe, 200 came. Because the Rebbe paid half. There were always a lot of French people. It's very important to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, that was also a very memorable moment. I can't say I remember it. I remember the Frenchies jumping, but I don't remember the Rebbe singing. I would be a lie. I remember where I was. I remember where I was in Shul when it happened. But I cannot say I remember the Rebbe. And these are different kinds of things that happen. There's memorable things that would happen during the course of Hakafos. Now, B'chlal Simchas Torah, the Rebbe was different. Shmini Atzeres, the Rebbe was kind of withdrawn. The Rebbe was in himself. The Rebbe said that Abayim that given mehr in sich. In a way, Shmini Atzeres, the Rebbe was more serious even than Sukkos. And B'chal Shmini Atzeres was a quiet day. There was nothing going on. People slept. The only night of Sukkos people slept was Shmini Atzeres. Simchas Torah, the joy was so different because the Rebbe was in a different place. The Rebbe on Simchas Torah looked gorgeous. The Rebbe on Simchas Torah looked like the sun. So radiant, so beautiful. And that beauty was a happiness. And these are my own hergation. If by Kias and by Napoleon's march, you felt that the Rebbe is a million miles away, by Simchas Torah, you felt like he's standing next to you. The shul is full of people, and the Rebbe is your friend. There was such an incredible feeling of closeness. The biggest chiddush of Simchas Torah and Hakafos were that the first Ata Hareisa, the Rebbe said all 17 psukim, by night and by day. He said all 17 psukim. And I think I remember the Rebbe saying all the 17 psukim. I know I don't, but I think I do, you know. That I remember, right? Because that I heard 7 times every year. Yeah? No, 9 times every year. But La'osin Faiz Gedos, I remember. Do I remember? I think I remember. I tell myself I remember. But the Rebbe said the first Atarei, all 17 psukim. And then the second one, and the third one, the Rebbe got the first pasuk and the last pasuk, just like it was Shmini Atzeres by night. This was the boilerdicket difference between Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. Now there's a lot more details so I just described Hakafos to you as best as I could.
How long did it last on Simchas Torah?
About 2 hours.
Same long.
It started 1 o'clock in the morning. And in Meine Yorin, by 3:15, the Rebbe was out of the shul. In the earlier years, it took much longer, because they used to sell out. They sold the psukim. They would sell out Areisa. half of Hakafot, more than half of Hakafot was not Hakafot, was the Atareisa. And when there was people who used to stand the shul and bid, I remember people raising their fingers and they would make an announcement. This stopped Lamed Ches. The only thing they allowed you to bid after Lamed Ches was the last Kimitzian. You weren't bidding, you were being mishtatef. You were not bidding, you're trying to buy it, you were participating. A Molchai, Tzvei Molchai, 10 Molchai. So you joined with everybody, so they would stand in the front. Meshe Bagimilski, Meshe Peches Katz, the people, the Gaboyim, Zalman Garari. And they would look around the room and say your name, that you're joining in, you understand? But in the earlier years, the Hakafos took much longer because the Ataresis took longer. Okay, so our class is now finished, and the next group I'm going to tell them all the things I didn't tell you, and you're welcome to, if you want, I can send you the recordings, send me an email, I'll try to send them to you. Okay, Hatzlacha D'Kinyim Kippurim.